300,000 gated communities homes in a month, and
Wow.
that approximates to about 2,000 gated communities in a month, and translating to nearly 300,000 homes in a month. And that scale we have achieved in 2017. Before we raised our first institutional fund, we were doing 2 communities a month, and 2021 January we did 2,000 communities in a month.
It's phenomenal. And all of this in like last 3-4 years is like absolutely unbelievable, right? So the question is, this is not a very obvious idea, right? Like I've seen a lot of people getting into ideas which are very like in food or other things that excite them, right? But this is like a quite a nuanced opportunity that you spotted. And it's not like there were people who were solving parts of the puzzle in their own way, parts of it, not the full thing. So how did you really chance upon this idea? That's one thing. It's not also easy product to validate the product market fit. How did you do that, and when did you really know that this is what I want to commit my next decade or so of my life to?
All right, so there's a three-part question.
Yes.
Actually, I'll remember it by the time I answer
How
the
did you
first.
chance upon this idea? Let's start with that.
Before we get into how and actually it was not me, so we'll touch upon that story of how we collectively came up with the idea, and it was not me. A little bit about myself. First 11 years of my career has been in US. I moved back to India in 2009, took a soft landing through an MBA, and then joined Goldman Sachs. And that's where Vijay Arisetti, who had the original idea, also joined Goldman Sachs. We spent a good 5 years together in the same department, got to know each other quite well. I would say till about 2013 is when you start to get this edge ki, yaar, kuch karna hai. And at some point that becomes so strong that you cannot not do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is important to know about yourself first before you can take a plunge in entrepreneurship. So what I realized about myself is I'm probably not great at creative, thinking. There are so many people around me who are so good at that. Second, I knew that I could not do it alone. So it's not like a kuch idea aaya aur main akele nikal jaunga. So I knew I could not do it alone. And that is where Vijay comes in, and he first left Goldman. Then one fine evening he calls me, shares the thought and the idea. I chewed upon that for a few months, and then eventually happened to join him. At the same time, he also reached out to his batchmate from ISB, sort of shared the same idea.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about what the genesis of the idea was. But that's how the whole thing started. And then one more of his senior who did the initial seed funding for us to get started. So I'll just describe what the idea was. I think that now that we look back, we can crystallize it better actually than we would have done 4.5 years back. But we see there are the three macro factors that led us to the conviction to make the plunge are basically the three. So one is what we saw, that humans, all of us as human beings have primal needs around security, convenience. We all seek convenience. We all seek a sense of belonging and sort of a sense of community in where we stay. And as India is going through its own sort of urbanization story, and people are moving to tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, and sort of in a way starting their lives and leaving their roots. And actually, gated communities become a proxy for achieving these three things, right? Which is a sense of security, sense of convenience, because if I can afford it, I'll have at least some amenities or better infrastructure, which sometimes do lag in a public space. And third is obviously the security, convenience, and the sense of community and belonging around like-minded people around you. And we felt that while the aspiration of security is really high, what reality is far below those expectations, especially the second phenomena now, which is what we call commerce coming to doorstep.
Yeah.
Last 10 years, the likes of Amazon, Flipkart, and Zomato and Swiggy have told us multiple times that please don't come out to shop, and commerce will come to your doorstep. While communities are designed to keep people out,
Yeah.
and that creates a friction between brands and products and services who are wanting to reach the gated communities, but they are actually kept out. We felt that a platform can solve that. Well, we felt that there's a problem statement to solve. It is at large scale across gated communities. Gated communities are growing at a phenomenal rate. People are preferring to stay in gated communities. So that's, next 20 years, we'll see more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the two triggers that really sort of led us to the conviction saying that let's solve what's happening at the gate and reduce the friction between reduce the trust deficit that exists between people who are inside the house and the people on the outside who are seeking to come inside to serve and deliver services and goods. Can we have a platform that solves it in a seamless way? That was our original idea, and as we build the product to solve for a couple of use cases, then we found that the opportunities are actually much larger as you study the space. Again, we'll touch upon that. So the first part was, I guess, when did we think of the idea and what was the genesis and what was the
second question was, how did you kind of do a validate a market, product market fit, because it's not a very easy product to kind of
absolutely
get that response.
This is full credit to Vijay and Shreyans. I think the product thinking. And then when I joined a few months later, I think what we did was we spent time on ground, right? I think all three of us would have spent several weeks, at the gate, understanding what is the psyche of a guard, which part of country they come from, what is their earning, what is their motivation in life, and you also did some study for us in that regard. What is their ability to interact with tools and systems, right? Is it going to make their life better, or they're going to just something that has been entrusted onto them by some random company and management committee, right? So it was important to build something that actually makes the life of the guard better and helps them manage what is happening at the gate. That is second. And second, unfortunately, they also end up being at the receiving end if they don't do the job well, and also at the receiving end if they actually do the job well. Let's say if they stop a resident and he's not working with the ID card, he's doing just his job to stop the resident because he has no idea whether this person is a resident or not. But they end up being the receiving end. So we just wanted to solve that problem at the guard. And the second point was one key problem, which is the Migrate intercom that became like a signature sort of ring and product all across India. It is where the initial validation happened when people started to say, how much do I pay for it? And then the initial years, and there's probably a question around what we did in the initial first few months. You take it to the different stakeholders and tell them and give them to use, trial, and that's how we figured that out, that it's solving real use cases and simple use cases, right? My domestic staff, whether it's cook, nanny, or maid, there's a problem statement which says that I have no idea that they have come into the society. And we say, we'll solve it for you. The moment they are crossed that main gate, you will know that they have come into the society. It's a very simple use case, but that really struck the chord and people really liked it.
And Abhishek, was there a kind of a point in the journey where exactly you knew that, yes, this is worth chasing and this is worth committing to?
Yeah,
because it's a long journey. It's a very long journey, right? It's almost
very. Look, I think you have to be mentally prepared. So before how long you have to commit for that, you have to be mentally ready for the long haul. So in my case, and I know in both Shreyans and Vijay case as well, at least I had before the plunge was taken. I know that Vijay had tried, 2 startups ideas, very early days. I was working with a startup back when I was doing my the MBA days. So, and then I had also prepared myself financially to not have a regular sort of steady state income for at least 3 years.
Okay.
So you got you got to be ready with those sort of strong sort of emotional and other points that you have to commit it to already. especially at our age with family and kids, right? So you have to be prepared for those before you take the jump, in my mind. And in the journey, in our case, I think it did help that I don't think we really saw sort of a downturn, so as to speak, right? People really joined us in the journey, believing that this can be really a large, exciting opportunity, and that kept us going.
And what were some of the initial challenges like in the beginning? Because as I said, Mike, to convince so many stakeholders and to kind of try this out and to figure out whether this is working, this is really adding value. How did you go about that, and what were some of the biggest challenges in that phase?
So the first was, which I already spoke about, which is the product market fit. So you really have to solve for your key stakeholders, knowing them very well, and for Vijay and me to spend many weeks at the from 5 a.m. in the morning till night, looking at what's happening at the peak hour. We did video shoots of the gate to sort of study it later. So you really have to get your hands dirty first in sort of understanding and bringing an offering that does make sense to somebody, your key stakeholder. That's the first part. You have to do that right. There is no shortcut to it. And the second part is, even now that you believe that you have a good product, right? The second challenge is, how do you get to your audience, to your decision makers, especially when, gated community ecosystem of RWAs, cooperating housing societies, then you have facility management companies, you have security agencies, you have builders. There are so many decision makers at different life of a society. So the challenge for us was just finding and getting in touch with them. And what we did was first almost 15 months, and these guys are only available on the weekends because they also do their day job, and in the weekend they do all these meetings with the other players of the ecosystem. So for almost 15 months, every Saturday, Sunday, Vijay and I were on the road. I would have done like a meeting in south of Kanakpura, and then in the morning before lunch, and I would have gone to let's say a Hebel meeting for a demo. So it's just the sheer madness of just meeting all stakeholders. Whenever they say yes, I'm ready to meet. You don't say that, oh no, can I not meet you at this time? Can you just go when they are available to meet. That's one. So the challenge of just going all over and just going out and meeting people who will hear you. So you just have to take it up. And when you start to taste some success, I think the challenge is then staying true to yourself. And I'll describe what we mean. We were very clear we want to be a product company and we want to be a B2C brand. But when you have tasted some success, but you still don't have funding, you still don't have more than 5 clients. But there were several people, for example, builders, there were large facility management companies who saw a product and they said, look, that's great, but would you white label? And it becomes very tempting, right, to say, oh, you're getting a check of 5 lakh, 10 lakh, whatever, right? Let's just go ahead and do it. And that's a very slippery slope, right? You have to be very clear what you want to do, because once you take that kind of a decision, you are bringing in a very different DNA in the company. So that was, we went through those very hard discussions internally. So that was a challenge, to say no to temptations. So first temptation was things like these, which did not fit your true being, why you started the company. And second was, not committing to, or not taking more than you can digest. So we started in Bangalore, and they said we'll only do Whitefield, Sarjapur, and let's say the IT corridor. And at the same time, we started to get inbound requests from Pune, Hyderabad, and few cities. And we knew we didn't have the resources. But again, it's very tempting. It's, there is an inbound, very strong interest. Let's send somebody to like 3 cities and start all of them together. So just saying no to all those things that at that point is challenging and difficult. So that's what I would say what we faced. And last one, which is a perennial challenge for anybody, which is attracting the right talent. And again, being true to yourself is very important. We would have not hired, before we decided to hire the first senior sales guy, we would have not said yes to at least 30, 40 of individuals who sort of interviewed with us. That is also very difficult.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're like, "Arey, hire karo, let's move on," right? So yeah.
True. So, from what I gather is that knowing what not to do is actually as important, if not more important, than what to do.
Yeah, especially when you start to have some early success, then
Absolutely.
it's you have to know what path you should not take, right? Because you will get pulled into different directions, and people will make some offers. People will say you join us. People will say you merge with us. People will say you start 10 cities, and it's very tempting.
Absolutely. And the other kind of challenge with MyGate is that, from a brand point of view, is that you're catering to so many cohorts, right? And the varying degrees of the abilities and, literacy and so on, right? So management committee, you're talking to residents, and then security guards who are really using the product, and then service providers. So how do you solve for so many people? Are you like prioritizing for few over the others, foolproofing for few over the others? How does that work?
So it's a great question, and actually something we were chatting about a few weeks back as we were introspecting as to what are the key capabilities, DNA and muscle sort of that we have built. And actually this one question is very relevant because that is the muscle we have built, right? Because we, as you rightly said, the community ecosystem is not first one decision maker. It is an enterprise, but it is not. It doesn't act like an enterprise. It doesn't act like a corporate or a company. There are multiple individual stakeholders. I'll just repeat. You have residents. Some of those residents also become management committee members. Then you have security guards. You have all the service providers who are interacting with MyGate as they pass through the gate, right? There is an interaction there. You have facility management companies, small and big, whose staff may be having their attendance through the MyGate ecosystem. There is private security agencies whose guards are operating MyGate devices. So this entire ecosystem, you have to, it's like a machinery with multiple parts and cogs. Yeah. Even if one small part of it doesn't rotate with the same RPM as the rest of the other parts, the machine will fail. And I feel inherently that is what we have been able to first understand and internally develop the capabilities to measure the performance or our performance towards these stakeholders through very, very different lens. So I'll give you an example. We look at whether the management committee is being successful with us through a very different metric than what we look at from the resident perspective. While somebody will say, hey, I'm sure you guys are doing, you should do resident NPS, which we do, but we also do guard NPS, right? Which may be an afterthought for somebody else, right? Yeah. So I think, that is been our DNA from day one, that you have to carry the entire ecosystem together. But you have to also have, so almost, and this is something we heard from others, and realized it later that we actually did good. We started the investment in internal systems, tools, and processes. That journey we started 3 years back now, which many startups don't do in the first 3 to 4 years. They are all outward focus in the product, in the branding, and building a product that for which somebody will pay. We started the journey of investment in KPIs, metrics, processes, systems, and tools, which are internal focused almost 3 years back. And today that has helped us set the foundation to do these not only 2,000 new communities per month at scale, but also retain the 17, 19, 20, by end of the year, let's say we'll have 35,000, 40,000 communities. We have to retain them as well.
Absolutely.
And this is the difficult part which we feel proud we have solved for.
And the other bit about MyGate is that it's a B2B2C, right? So on one end, you will have to have people on, feet on street to talk and convince the management committee. And it's a kind of a very nuanced, complex, long drawn sales cycles. And the other end, you will have to start this journey of brand building for the end users, right? Yeah. So what are some of the lessons there for people who are kind of wanting to or operate in the space of B2B2C?
Yeah, I think we just think over it. Uh, so one aspect is, yes, while the sale process is B2C, sorry, B2B, which is
Yeah.
you're either selling it to a builder if the builder is in charge of the community, or you're selling it to the management committee or the elected representative of the residents. So in both cases, it's a B2B. But in the latter case, it is the residents themselves who become the management committee. So in a way, solving and having a B2C mindset is imperative for us, right? We cannot afford to not think about the end user. So that's imperative. What the great point is, well, it's sort of two double-edged sword. Once we sign up a community, we do sign up all the homes, and then the management committee also helps in the adoption of the product inside the community. So that's the positives. Second, as I said in the previous comment, the previous question, you have to build the product with a lens of all the stakeholders. So while a resident will look at the resident app interaction and see what MyGate is doing for me in my daily life, an RWA member will look at it and say, is it helping me solve my maintenance collection problem? Is it helping me solve my AMC of my assets? Is it helping me solve a very efficient way of managing the complaints of the residents and assignment of those complaints with my electrician, plumbers, and other staff? Right, so they look at a very different lens. I think the moat that we have built is we have built the capability to solve for all of them at scale. And I think that is where I feel that there is probably no company in India who's done this at scale at which we are doing for a very tough sort of category of community and RWAs across India.
Yeah.
So there's one more aspect I want to add, how it flipped for us. I think when in Bangalore, once the word of mouth started to spread about residents really liking the product, they became our advocate after we achieved about 30,000 users on Bangalore on specific concentration of pin codes. So they really became our advocate to the decision maker, saying that, hey, we have to try MyGate.
And that's like the ultimate moment of truth for a product, where the residents are actually, because I've seen so many people asking me, does your apartment use MyGate? Or it almost became like a cool thing to show that, have you checked this out? It doesn't happen to brands in this category, honestly.
So to the extent, we don't hear it as much now because it's almost like accepted norm. But after 2 years of the journey, people would be in meetings in their offices and they would get the signature MyGate ringtone for a delivery executive coming. And like 4 people will pick out, take their phone out of their pocket to see kiska hai, right?
Yeah.
And they would say, kiste abhi MyGate hai kya? Oh, looks like you got off MyGate as well. So we heard so many such instances in the first 2-3 years.
And, as I asked you and in the beginning that you solve for so many use cases, and, the real picture of success is when the residents are able to get the most out of MyGate, right? So how do you really ensure that beyond the basic functionalities of allowing people, check-ins and paying bills or whatever, residents really understand all the new features or everything that you're adding, right? And they're using it, because that must be a big challenge, honestly.
No. So there's no shying away from this, Guru. It is a challenge. It continues to be a challenge, and we will probably solve it for next few years. So it is a very challenging statement, sort of situation. Once you have made a brand associate, so like any product, typically you look at Excel, right? Excel has like hundreds, maybe thousands of features, functionality, but a common person probably uses less than 1% of it. And the challenge is, for a product like ourselves, we have so much to offer, but the association with a particular use case becomes strong for every individual, and those use cases may be different for different individuals. And we are figuring it out, and what we do is to improve anything, you have to start measuring it. So we we became very particular about measuring it very closely. So that's the first step. So right from DAO Mao or DAO Wow, which is weekly average usage, to looking at all parts of the MyGate app screen to see where are the clicks happening, which tabs are being explored, which city and which cohort is exploring which type of tabs. Then the good part about, I think, our product, which is probably not true for many products, is people do keep the notification on. Right? Because that's really the point of interaction with MyGate, especially when they have their domestic help coming in to know when they're coming in or checking out, or when they are when you have deliveries or visitors or guests coming in. So it is a constant challenge, Guru, and I would love anybody who can help me or help us solve this. But the first step is we just watch and measure closely what our users are doing on the app, and our second attempt is we just try to communicate in different ways of what else they can do on the system. So, yeah, these are two things.
Every brand nowadays is jumping onto this whole bandwagon of building a community, right? Some of them are trying, hard and probably varying degrees of success, and some are absolutely failing. But the most enviable thing about MyGate is that 3 million homes and the people who stay in those homes are all a part of this app, right? Of this community, and they don't switch off their notifications, right? What are some of the things that you're doing to tap onto the potential and possibilities of this community?
So I think we have barely scratched the surface. What what we feel is the next 20 years, we still are very individualistic. We act like individuals, especially I'll take an example of commerce because that's an area we are stepping into.
Yeah.
So we still have all the e-commerce players and we buy as individuals. We order services as individuals. What people will soon starting to realize, and it's already happening in pockets, that as a community they have a much higher collective buying power, right? And that's a demand side. On the supply side, product companies and services companies look at these gated communities and they see a hotspot or a concentration of consumption possibilities. Right, especially by looking at a community, you also start making proxies about अच्छा यहाँ पर society का flat current ये होगा तो disposable income ऐसा है, discretionary spend capability होगा, whatever it is, right? So for brands and services companies, it's a very attractive target segment that they want to reach out to.
Yeah.
So both sides we aim that can come together on MyGate, right? And that is the different way of commerce that we are envisioning for next several years. So that's one area. Second, what we already see is the real estate space, right? Everybody is trying to figure out. Not everybody. I mean, people. 40-50% of communities are rented out or having tenants. Sorry, or they're empty because they're investor flats, and that is a space also that we feel we can really impact in a very different way, where we not just show to a potential flat or a home seeker a list of societies, but can we show a list of lifestyles that would potentially suit that individual, right? So that's some of the angle we are working on. So these are two areas that we believe one can make an impact. And when you look at a community, there are so many things, right? So community as a whole, as an individual spends, the community as a whole also spends, right? So RWAs, and they have a budget, right? They collect maintenance fees. They spend every month. The budgets can range from, let's say, a 500 unit society. With a 2,000 rupees, I'm just making it up, right? Let's say 4,000 rupees per month is a 20 lakh budget spent in a month, right? And they're all doing it in individual society. Now, what if there was a sort of society of societies, or a LinkedIn version of management committee members. I don't know. I'm just making it up, but we definitely see a lot of greenfield opportunities that MyGate can really make a meaningful impact.
Absolutely. And like, just to imagine the number of possibilities that can happen and the kind of use cases that you can solve, it's phenomenal. So is there a kind of a guiding principle or framework, like you said, to be clear of what not to do as to what to do? So how do you prioritize among these choices?
So we look at what is very organic to us first.
Okay.
So the let's say our natural extension when we solved the security at the gate problem statement was to then solve all use cases of the community at large, right? So we, first 2 years we were solving only things at gate. Then the next organic growth or expansion of product portfolio was to solve all different use cases for the community, which means accounting, invoice, asset management, inventory, complaint management, discussion forum, amenity booking, notice board, and so on and so forth, right? Which means there are so many reasons to be on MyGate, and then that we already solved that. So what we believe next is that with that engaged community, can we solve commerce in a different, so that the next piece is what is next organic step for us.
Okay.
Doing that, is there a way to solve security in a better way beyond the gate as well? So that's an area we are exploring, which is also very organic to us because people associate with MyGate with a very strong quotient of trust and a very strong quotient of that these guys know community security, right? So we believe that security as a space in general is going to be an exciting space, and we'll delve deeper into it beyond just the gate. Commerce, community commerce, and we saw some very good signs of that during the lockdown last year, where communities started to buy as community in true sense rather than individuals. So we believe that putting a structure around that is very organic to us. At the same time, the supply side of brands and product also reaching out to us and seeing us as a natural way to reach out to the community is very organic. So we look at these are the new initiatives for us, which are very organic, and that's how we prioritize, right? So we are not getting, for example, into a possibility like building a marketplace of solar or electric vehicle charger. वो भी करेंगे, but अभी नहीं कर सकते, right?
Yeah. And the other question is that we're talking about lockdown and COVID has impacted so many businesses, but the fact that all of us were stuck at our homes, and any startup that caters and manages communities is so important. And I also saw some of your efforts during that time, which is making all newspapers accessible on your app, right? And many others. How did you really kind of ramp your technology efforts during those days, and how did you really make that as an opportunity to add more value to your residents?
Yeah, it was a bit of a crazy time, right? I think lockdown happened, our offline engine of sale sort of slowed down, our offline engine